30 minutes late.
Yes.
We on Black people time. Okay. Share the screen, child. Okay. Oh, all right. So guilt is a superpower. So I know you're wondering how can guilt be a superpower, and it's just because it is. Especially as high achieving women and high achievers, nurses, everything having to be perfect, almost to the T because you have someone's life in your hands. And the moment you make a mistake, you instantly feel guilty, right? It is something that we all struggle with. And today we're going to walk through how this is a superpower. Okay. I want to start with the meditation. Um, and just keep in mind that this is not something that you have to do. You have a choice. You can opt out of this. I'm not forcing anyone to participate. But the main thing I just want you to walk away with is just knowing that you have the power. Okay. So we'll start the meditation and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Take a moment to settle into your seat. Let your spine lengthen gently and soften your shoulders. Release your jaw. Release the muscles around your eyes and let your throat soften. And when your face and your throat soften, your nervous system will receive the signal that I am safe and that I can let go. Now bring your awareness to the soft bowl of your lower belly. This is your womb space. This is also your creation space. This is the place where life begins, where intuition rises, and where your truth has always lived. For so long, you may have been told to hold your stomach in, flatten, flatten it, control it. But your creation space cannot expand and tension. So right here, right now, let your womb space soften. Breathe in and let your belly naturally rise. Let the muscles around your waist release and let the organs underneath relax into your breath. Now, slowly draw a breath all the way down into your womb space. You should feel your belly expanding as if it's welcoming the breath home. Imagine your stomach, liver, intestines all gently moving with the breath, making space for you inside of you. Take another slow inhale. Feel the oxygen reaching places you haven't breathed in a while. Now, exhale and melt just a little more. Now bring your awareness to the area just beneath your belly button. This is your creation space. This is the origin point of a new identity, new choices, and new versions of you. Breathe into that center. Notice what awakens. Is it warmth, tingling, openness, heaviness, anything? It could also be nothing. Now, I want you to ask your creation space gently. What do you want me to know today? What truth is rising in me right now? What is ready to be released? What is ready to be created? Now, I don't want you to force. No judging, just listening. Now take one more long, deep breath into your womb space and into your creation space. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes, carrying forward this softness, this spaciousness, and the truth that you felt rising within you. And like I said, I want you to know that you have the power. Like if you don't leave here with anything else, I want you to know that you have the power. Even though I am the person being the middleman or being the messenger, the power is within you. Okay? So who am I? Some of you already know me. Many of my friends and colleagues are in here inside the community. Um, Many of us have the same struggles or have been through the same struggles with our identities and, like work-life balance, family issues, childhood trauma. But yes, my name is Aporia. I'm a nurse practitioner, wellness facilitator, um, functional medicine, telehealth provider, and I've spent years performing, people pleasing. I've also just really lost pieces of myself trying to be liked, I guess, in the sense of it. Um, and then I went through like this healing process where I thought I was just, going to therapy meant that I was healed, or like reading self-help books meant that I was healed. And it works at first, but then it's like, what's next? Like when you encounter these things again and you don't recognize it, why didn't I recognize it when I knew better? Or why didn't I, see this happening again? And that's where guilt creeps in, and we'll get into that today. And also just feeling guilty for choosing myself too, because there was a time in my life where I was responsible for a lot more than I should have been, right? And I know that as many of you um, feeling the same type of way. Uh, and that feeling of guilt made me feel like I was failing, but it was actually guiding me. And we'll expand on that. Guilt as a superpower. The truth about guilt no one ever told you. Let's begin. This is for you if you identify with any of these. You feel guilty for disappointing people, you feel guilty for putting yourself first, or you're confused on why you shouldn't feel guilty, but you still do. And you feel guilty for resting. You feel guilty for having needs. And you feel guilty when you slow down. You feel guilty when you rest. Okay? You feel guilty when you take time for yourself, right? This is for you. Let's get it moving. This is what you will learn, right? So we'll go over why guilt is not a flaw, why high achievers feel guilt the most, how to hear the truth behind your guilt, and why guilt is actually integrity at a low vibration, right? The difference between clean guilt and bondage guilt, how guilt becomes an illusion, how to listen to guilt as spiritual intelligence, and how guilt becomes a superpower through re-perception. So this is a picture of me actively feeling guilty, actively feeling like the weight of the world was on top of me, right? Um, but I want to offer you a new perspective. Guilt isn't the enemy, the attachment to guilt is. What if I told you guilt was a signal, right? Why would guilt be a signal? You have any answers? Anybody want to chime in on what they think guilt as a signal is? And if you can't um, unmute, you can place it in the chat. Okay. Hopefully we can hear you now, girl.
Can you hear me?
I don't hear nothing though.
Ah,
Yeah. You can put it in the chat and I'll read it out. While she's typing, I will continue. So, guilt can be a signal. Okay, so she says it's a warning that something is wrong and that your thoughts are not in alignment. I would agree with that. I think that is a great perspective. It's a warning that something's wrong. I would argue that most of your emotions are that, right? So guilt is a signal that something's wrong, as Shanika said. Um, and it's through when we attach feeling guilty as an I am guilty that creates this pattern or this self-imprisonment or what a lot of people would call bondage. And this is where in between the I am and the I feel, you can insert self-love and start to listen to something, listen to the warning that Shanika spoke about, instead of identifying with guilt, right? Attaching yourself to guilt. What is bondage? Someone may not know what bondage is, right? Bondage is self-imprisonment. Self-imprisonment, and the way that I would describe it is basically an emotion that becomes an identity. So instead of saying that I feel like this, you're identifying that I am this. And once you begin to speak over your life that you are something, then you create this attachment, this unhealthy attachment, rather than letting a feeling, which is a temporary vibration, move through you. You then identify with it and it becomes permanent. It becomes something, it becomes a loop, right? And here, we're going to help you get off that loop. And you're going to see how guilt is actually a hidden superpower. I know I keep saying that, but it's coming. I'm gonna show you. So, bondage, or the key takeaway here is that bondage or self-imprisonment is when the emotion stops moving, when you attach the emotion to your identity. This inhibits or stops the emotion from being able to move freely through your system. Because it should take you about 30 seconds or so to process an emotion. The thing that we get hooked on or we get trampled on is just saying I am, and rather, okay, I'm feeling like X, Y, and Z, rather than saying I am X, Y, and Z. So, what are the symptoms of bondage? What are the symptoms of self-imprisonment? I hear people all the time talking about, I keep having the thoughts, and then this thought will lead to this thought, and this thought will lead to this thought. What is that? You ever listen to a song and then you replaying it and you replaying it and replaying it? What is that? That is a loop, right? We want to help you get off of that loop. You punish yourself, right? You won't do this or you won't do that because you might have forgot to do this. But what is that really doing? Why are you punishing yourself? Where did you even learn punishment, right? Carrying everyone's emotions. That's not your job. Why are you carrying everyone's emotions? And why do you have an attachment to someone else's emotions? These are the questions we have to start asking ourselves when we find ourselves drowning, right? Or feeling like that intense amount of guilt. People pleasing, guilt for feeling or feeling like you need to rest, emotional paralysis. That could look like procrastination, overthinking. Do any of you see yourselves in this slide? Which of these are hitting closest to home? Comment. I want to know. Overthinking. Yep. Overthinking when you I'm going to expand on overthinking too, because that's another thing, right? That's another symptom of an emotion or another symptom of high achieving, I would say, or just wanting to be the best at everything, wanting that perfectionism instead of just. Shanika says, I used to carry others people's emotions. It took a lot to work through that. Absolutely, same. I used to feel like it was my responsibility to fix others. And it's not. It's impossible, right? And when you put an impossible task on your shoulders, it's it's not sustainable. You can't sustain that, right? And not only will your emotions let you know you can't sustain that, your body will follow because as above, so below. So that means everything is spiritual before it's physical. And if you're carrying everybody else's stuff, what Erykah Badu say? Bag lady, you got too much stuff. You're gonna have to unload it. So naturally, if you're carrying everybody else's stuff, you're gonna feel fatigue. You're not gonna have energy for yourself because you didn't give it all away. You're using the energy, you're using your vitality, you're using your creation space to create for others. You're using your creation space to hold for others. Where is your space? Moving on from symptoms. Now we know what the symptoms are. Now we can talk about the two sides of every emotion. Two sides of every emotion. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean for you? Does anyone want to share what two sides of every emotion means to them? I know you're probably thinking like, oh, happy and then sad, right? Is that what happy and then sad? I think that's what most people might think of when they see this slide is like, is it happiness or is it sadness? But what if I told you it's the same thing? So guilt and integrity, similarly to happy and sadness, they're on the same spectrum. They are on the same spectrum. So that would mean that happiness is only a degree of sadness, and sadness is only a degree of happiness, and guilt is only a degree of integrity. Wait, integrity? So feeling guilty just means you have integrity? That sounds like a superpower to me. A lot of us operate out of integrity. We operate at one of the highest levels of life. We operate at a high level because we honor and we value integrity, and that is a superpower. They are the same level, they are the same energies at different vibrations. A low vibration of integrity is just guilt. A high vibration of guilt is just integrity. Shanika says she never thought about it like that. I want you to know there's more to come. This is just the beginning, right? I'm going to break this down so well that you leave here like, oh, dang, I never have to feel guilty again. I just have to have integrity with myself, right? I have to have integrity with other people. That way I don't feel guilty, right? The most times when we do feel guilt is because we have not upheld our internal standards to the same way that we uphold our external standards. And I'll talk about it a little more. But also on this picture, I added um, more so of a process of what happens on each side of the spectrum. So guilt, once you feel that emotion, guilt, or more so like the process that you should be going through, but a lot of people just stay on one side of the spectrum. So the first side is guilt. The next, you judge yourself, you shame yourself, you tell yourself you should be better, or you try to self punish, right? And most people just stay within the guilt and self-judgment stage. And they never move into the emotional awareness stage, right? And it is at this stage that you realize I am not guilty. I feel guilty. Those are two different things. Do you, I don't know how many people are very religious, but in the Bible, when Moses went up to the mountain, when he was attempting to lead his people into freedom, essentially, right? And he goes up there, and there's this burning bush, and he's seeing it, but he's not like understanding like how's it even, he having like a little, whatever. But then God starts to speak, and he says, well, what do I go and I tell Pharaoh? Like, what do I tell them? Like, who sent me? Or, what do I say? And he says, I am that I am. And it was in that moment that God bestowed upon Moses the same power that you and I have, right? The same power that God has, the I am. And once we start to identify and we attach ourselves with emotions, we are then putting that emotion on a pedestal rather than feeling like we are equal or more than it, right? Because the I am belongs to you. The I am does not belong to the emotion of guilt. So, guilt as a prison. Guilt as a prison looks like loops chronically. So constantly repeating the same thing over and over to yourself, constantly saying the same things over and over to yourself and not even being conscious of it, right? You're not conscious of your thoughts. You're letting the same type of thoughts rerun in your mind. You're punishing yourself constantly. You are shaming yourself constantly. You're trying to be perfect at everything constantly. And this is going to, and in return, it's going to block your intuition because then you're going to over analyze it. And then because you're striving for perfection, you're adding more stress to your life, which is then going to affect your nervous system, which is then going to affect your immune system. And then you just basically you end up an emotional slave. You end up making that I am guilty your master. Why would you want to do that? Why would you do that when feeling guilty is just an emotion? And it's just a degree of integrity, right? Guilt as a superpower looks like knowing your values. So knowing that, oh, no, I just have integrity. And then once you know that I have integrity, then you can move in alignment, right? And then you can say, how can I improve this in the future? Then it moves that 30-second process. I just have integrity. Next time I want to do this instead of this. I have integrity with myself. I didn't choose myself here. I didn't have integrity with myself here. So next time I'm going to say no because that's integrity. Having boundaries is a form of integrity. It's also doesn't look like you stupid, calling yourself stupid. It doesn't like calling yourself out of your name. It doesn't look like that, right? It has compassion, right? It understands these are my values, right? I know that I messed up or I wasn't in alignment with who I say I am. I am. There it is. I am again. It doesn't align with who I say I am. So next time I'm going to do this. I'm human. I make mistakes sometimes, but my mistakes do not define who I am. So self-imprisonment. Our bondage guilt is a cage. It's not a compass, right? When you have values and you understand that your emotions stem from your value system, right? You can use your values as the compass, right? Those emotions are not supposed to be the compass. They're just clues. They're just signals. It's just a little saying something's wrong. Like, like that little tickle in your throat, right? But it's not like that little tickle in your throat is not equate to a flu. It just indicates maybe something's there. Maybe I need to clear my throat. Maybe I need to take the next step to brew a tea or, cover my head, cover my feet, do things for your well-being. And it's the same thing. The master deceiver. This is my favorite part. Last night I went to the movies and I saw Now You See Me. And he talked about, have anybody seen Now You See Me? Have you seen the movie yet? If you haven't, you should definitely go see it. I think it's their third movie, but I love all of them. I am a fan. I'm going to see it again. That's how great it was. The master deceiver. Who do you think the master deceiver in your life is? Anybody have any idea? Put in the comments who do you think the master deceiver is? In the movie, it's a woman, but I mean, we're all women here, or I don't know who listening to this at this time, but you know, Shanika says me, and Shanika would be absolutely correct. Your survival identity is the true master deceiver, right? The reason why we think we have to people please in the first place is because we had to people please when we didn't have any autonomy over our lives, right? The reason why we it's tough for us to say no is because we couldn't. There was a time when we weren't allowed to say no. Otherwise, it would jeopardize our safety in that moment. But you're no longer there. You are the master of your life now. You are the I am, right? So that survival identity that you once were is deceiving you. And it's not deceiving anyone else, right? Because other people don't think like what you tell yourself. You think you're wrong, you think you're failing, and sometimes you think you should shrink. Oh, I shouldn't wear this, or I shouldn't say that, or you are out, you know, with your friends, or you're out having a good time, and when you get home, the ride home is not you reflect on how good of a time you had. It's you thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said this, I shouldn't have wore this, or it's you thinking how terrible it went, and when they're thinking how great you are. What if I told you it's all an illusion? It is all your imagination. So, like I said, I went to go see Now You See Me last night. And at the end of the movie, he said, to manipulate a master deceiver, you must change her reality. And you really have to see the movie to see why this was so mind blowing. But the truth is, perception creates reality. We've heard this. We've heard this before. I bet you've heard the person say, if you just change your perspective to the person, your future self, then you can manifest your desired reality. What does that mean? What does that mean? I swear I've literally pondered on it, I meditated on it, and I figured it out. And I'm gonna show you. So when perception shift, when you have a perception shift, the illusion that you once had can no longer be held. And the reason why is because the mind can't hold two realities at once. So that's the reason why when you that's the reason why when you see someone living the life that you want, right? You see that it's possible, like, and that is like a glitch. That's a glitch in the system. That's a glitch in reality telling you, oh no, that is actually possible. But some people don't move past that. They don't move past seeing that it is possible. But you do know that it's possible. So reality creation happens when the emotional truth, which is you're feeling this, you're not this, right? Then you move on to, you move through the process of, processing emotion, and then you realize, oh no, this is just my values, this is just my compass, right? And that can override that survival identity. And I want you to hold on to what I said about perception creates reality. And I want you to hold on to what I said about to manipulate a master deceiver, you must change her reality. Hold on to those two things. Okay. This is a quote that I found really interesting, especially when I talk about like mind, body, and spirit. Unhealthy guilt is an autoimmune disease of the soul that causes us to literally reject our own worth as human beings. Unhealthy guilt. What is unhealthy guilt? Unhealthy guilt is identifying with guilt. I am guilty. I feel guilty, right? Feelings are not facts. Feelings should be transiting. Feelings should move. Emotions should be energy and motion. And when you don't move it, the reason why you don't move it is like I said previously, I am guilty. You're not guilty. You have integrity. You have a value system, right? You have a blueprint of how you desire to live your life, and that is what it is. That's the truth of that. That's your emotional truth. And once you start to move within your value system and you realize that your emotions stem from what you value, then you won't reject yourself. You won't cause an autoimmune disease, right? You won't cause your body to work against itself because you will no longer be working against yourself. Everything ends and begins in the mind. So if you change your perception, like I said before, hold on to that. If you change your perception, or if you change your experience, the reality reorganizes. So in the movie, what they did was to trick the lady. They basically. Well, I don't want to spoil the movie. I won't spoil the movie. I'm just gonna explain what and how, and maybe you can gather what happened in the movie. But the guilt feels real because your mind has accepted it as truth. Your mind has now accepted it as I am this thing, right? Because you told it that. You told it I am guilty the truth of it is I have integrity. I am a person that moves in integrity. And that is where it stems from, right? And when we change the internal reality, shifting to integrity rather than guilt, then the guilt illusion will literally dissolve. So you will no longer feel guilty. You will no longer even have that emotion anymore, or that weight on your shoulders because you know where it stems from. You know the truth, right? Why high achievers get trapped? High achievers feel guilty for saying no, having boundaries, choosing yourself, having integrity with yourself, choosing themselves or doing less, right? Being tired or outgrowing people, right? You feel bad for that. You feel like it's your fault or you should hold on to everything, right? But if you hold on to things, new things can't even come in. Your desired reality can't come in if you're still holding on to your survival identity, the old I am, right? Not performing at 100%. You're trying to be perfect at everything. The teacher must always be a student. You're never going to be perfect at everything. I'm not perfect at everything. I'm not even perfect with this presentation. I'm learning as I go. I spent 30 minutes or 40 minutes trying to figure out how to get this sound on. But we here. And that's because guilt is mistaken for morality. Morality. Guilt is mistaken for good or bad, right? You think things are good or bad. But like I said, everything is one. Everything is just it's not separate, right? So if it's not separate, that means good is just a degree of bad, and bad is just a degree of good. So even so, what is morality at that point, right? The things that are going to sit with you the most are going to be the internal guide system that you have in yourself, right? No one else has to abide by that but you. and you have to take you wherever you go. I always say the hardest person to forgive, the hardest person to forgive is yourself. And that's why when you don't listen to your intuition, or you say I knew that you have to take you wherever you go. So you're going to constantly be telling yourself, oh, you should have did this, you should have listened when they said this. You're going to constantly be beating a dead horse, because the hardest person to forgive is yourself. And you want to know why? Because you have to take you wherever you go. You can tell that person no and go to sleep and wake up and not see them again. But you got to go to sleep with yourself. That's why you can't sleep. That's why you're fatigued. That's what, because you're constantly beating yourself up. You're constantly feeling guilty all the time for trying to reach not only impossible standards, right? Not withholding the integrity with yourself, because your relationship with yourself bleeds into everything else. Hey, I'm just a messenger. You have the power. Remember that. You have the power. And this is bringing me back to overthinking. I said, hold on to that, right? The high achiever lie. High achievers don't fail due to laziness. They operate at the low end of their strengths. So integrity is a strength, right? We it's a lost art, but it's definitely a strength. When you can move and you can sleep well at night, knowing that you moved and with integrity, that is a strength. Intuition is a strength. Everybody don't have it. People, and I always say intuition and discernment are not one and the same. Discernment comes from wisdom. Intuition is your divine intelligence. That's something that you were born with, that God gave you as a gift. Everybody don't have intuition. I ain't gonna say everybody don't have intuition. I ain't gonna say that. I feel like God grants everybody with intuitions. I would say everybody does not have access to their intuition, right? Perfectionism, right? That's your discipline collapse. If you knew how to be disciplined, you wouldn't need perfectionism. If you knew how to show up consistently and you understood the law of the compound effect, you would know eventually it's going to be what you want it to be, but you have to add to it consistently, which is discipline or devotion, right? So guilt is integrity collapse. Overthinking is your intuition collapse, because you're overthinking what your gut told you to do. You overthinking what your divine intelligence told you to do, because you're gifted in that way. You have access in that way, right? Perfectionism is discipline collapse or your devotion collapse. And we're going to break this illusion, right? Y'all remember like in high school when they would tell you to put on a different set of glasses and look through, and or it'll be like, no, put on a lens through Shakespeare's lens, or a philosopher Plato's lens. Think about this through the lens of Plato or something like that, right? What if I told you you could do the same thing to create your own reality? What if I told you that? To break this loop of feeling guilty all the time, this loop of procrastination because you want it to be perfect. What if I told you if you put on a different lens today, you could have a different life in 3 months, maybe less than that, depending on how you view time. I want this is when I say I think I broke something, right? Because I was sitting here creating this, and a voice said Newton's law, right? I was like, Newton's law. I was like, what? What is Newton's law? Do you know what Newton's law is? I think it's the second one, or it's one of them. But I feel like all of them are relevant, but specifically for this presentation, we're gonna talk about the one with where he talks about. Let me just check my notes, child. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Uh, okay, yeah. So it's Newton's third law. All right. Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So let's break this down. I I rewired this and I applied it to our emotions. So every emotional frequency that you have, every emotion that you have, because emotions are energy and motion. So every emotion that you have creates an equal or opposite reality. So your emotion is the internal action, the energy that moves, because anything that moves is an action, correct? And the reality that happened based off that emotional reaction, when you identify it as that reaction, instead of just letting it be a feeling and move through you, and the truth of that move through you, not the guilt move through you, but you honoring that you just have integrity, right? That is an internal action. That internal action then creates your reality, that external reaction. So if you think about the Newton video, let me see if I can find the video. I have like a little picture there. It's actually a video, but this Canva presentation thing isn't always perfect. So let's look at it. Let's take a look because I think it'll help also visually if you visually see it. Excuse me. Um, Share the screen. Can I share a different screen? How do I do that? Okay, I see. Okay, here we go. We are live here. All right, so here it is. So if you think about the emotion that you had and then the reality that it created, it's literally this, right? A equal and opposite reaction, but in psychological form. Earlier, I said I wanted you to hold on to your perception creates reality. And one other thing. So let's go back to that. To manipulate a master deceiver, you must change her reality. So let's go back to the Newton thing. We just talked about reality, right? So emotion is the internal reaction. Reality is the external reaction. So let's break this down. When you force productivity, right, you're operating out of guilt. Your body wants to create procrastination and shut down. So because you had that internal reaction of guilt and you want to force your productivity, the external reaction or your reality that you created through that lens or those set of glasses that you had on, your body procrastinated. It shut down. When you wanted to force perfection, right? Or you wanted to force it being totally perfect, that also procrastination. It also anxiety, right? Anxiety, which causes more stress, right? When you suppress guilt or you try to suppress it, you don't process it because you identified it with it in the first place. You held on to it and you didn't let it move through as it's supposed to on a higher level of integrity rather than guilt because integrity is your superpower. Remember that. You begin to feed it. So now you're walking around feeding this invisible thing, this invisible emotion, this invisible energy. You're feeding it. It's growing, and you end up creating a loop, or what people call Generational curses, right? I don't know if anyone's ever heard when you what you resist persists. Resistance is a form of attention, and attention is energy. If you're avoiding guilt, it becomes chronic guilt, and the emotion just gets louder and louder, right? And that resistance feeds the thing. Correct. It's definitely it, Shanika says that. Well, Shanika said that's why a certain person is in office right now. But that's neither here nor there. um, so avoided truth becomes the what that energy that you're avoiding, that internal action that you're avoiding moving, you're continuing to feed it, and it's creating your reality. So it's feeding the thing that you're trying to escape. You don't think that's crazy? And what did I say at the beginning? I said that you have the power. So if you have the power to change all of this, why don't you just change? What's stopping you? It's that master deceiver. Okay. So guilt is just a constricted frequency. It produces outcomes that match that same constriction that it is. You get more experiences that confirm guilt, failure, and self doubt. Those unwanted desires become real. And why do they become real? They become real because, like we said, that internal action creates the equal and opposite reaction, which is your reality. That reality returns the emotional signature that you emitted because you were putting that out. You were putting that lower frequency of guilt or that attachment to guilt that you had out when you could easily put out the same thing through integrity. So guilt creates unwanted outcomes, integrity creates aligned outcomes. Shame attracts confirming experiences. Self-authority attracts respect. Fear manifests the thing you're afraid of. Clarity manifests what you're ready to receive, right? I wouldn't even say clarity. I would say confidence. I would say conviction. I would say faith, right? All of those things are interconnected. But this is the frequency law, right? Do you see the connection? Do you see what I'm saying? Like if you're feeling guilty on the inside, you're going to then have a reality or an equal and opposite reaction, which is that confirming experience that you don't want to experience. Then you're going to go through that same loop of feeling guilty, shame, fear, anxiety. You're going to feel like a literal invisible load on your chest constantly when you can easily just say, I'm not guilty. I have integrity because you have the power. Like you literally have the power. It's no other way to put it. You have the power. So, what does it look like when you act from guilt? It looks like you overgive, you self abandon, you move out of a distorted reality, you say yes when you actually want to say no, which means you have obligations now. And then you become resentful because you say yes. You don't have any boundaries. People use you. You get used up. You have no energy. And you unconsciously treat people how to. you unconsciously teach people how you want to be treated. You just want to be used. You like that. And then you make decisions based off fear rather than the truth. And that reaction becomes equal to the frequency. So, of course, you're going to attract people who take from you. Of course, you're going to attract situations that reinforce guilt. Of course, you're going to manifest scenarios where you feel unseen. Of course, you're going to create outcomes that feel like punishment. Why is this happening to me? Why is it happening to you? These are questions that need answers. Or is this actually even happening to you? What lens do you have on that you feel like this is punishment? Guilt is a collapsed form of integrity. The reality that comes back is a collapsed version of what you truly desire. The reality that comes back is a collapsed version of what you truly desire. So, because you thought of it and you created an attachment to this feeling that does not feel good in your body and you have not processed it, you get a collapsed version. You get a collapsed reality of what you really desire. And let's talk about what you really desire. Oh, I thought I had another one. Hold on. Nope, that ain't it. Oh, okay. So yeah, here it is. Okay. So when you act from integrity, the truth becomes clear. The boundaries are clear. They're intact. Your boundaries and your truth are coherent, so they go together real bad. Your decisions are self-led. Your energy feels aligned. So you're going to have enough energy to sustain your true desires. You're going to have enough energy to say no. You're going to have enough energy to have boundaries, right? And boundaries don't mean rule a set of rules for other people, right? Boundaries are meant to keep you safe. So the boundaries are there for what you will and won't, do. It's not so much about like what others can and can't do in your life, right? You don't want your boundaries to become a that's a whole other we gonna get to that. So, like I said, when you act from integrity, your emotional field is stable, your body is in coherence with everything, your truth, your boundaries, the energy, the decisions in your life are self-led. You have autonomy because you're acting from integrity rather than acting out of guilt or feeling guilt or what you were supposed to be doing was feeling, but you identified with it. You made an attachment to it. And that reaction creates a reality, right? That reaction becomes equal to the frequency of aligned opportunities. You get clear feedback. People respect you. People reciprocate with you. You have clarity on your goals. You get favorable outcomes. Pathway doors begin to open, and you start to manifest. I wonder why. I wonder why you started manifesting so easily, right? When you started operating out of integrity or when you start, because you may not be doing that today. But I know you can remember a time when you did operate out of your value system and how easy life felt. Life can feel like that just again, like in just a few seconds, right? Because, like I said, you have the power. You have the power to change all of this because integrity is your real superpower. The reality that returns is your highest potential. Integrity is one of the highest things. It's a lot of people wish they could operate at the level that you do, right? And you're walking around feeling guilty because you walk around identifying with guiltiness because you have integrity. You know how backwards that sounds? That doesn't even sound right. Here is the turning point. You don't have to heal guilt by fighting it because, like I said, what you resist persists. You don't want to fight it. You don't want to like, argue with yourself about why you feel guilty. You just want to put on a different set of glasses, right? You want to put on those new lens and shift the experience so you can shift the identity and you can shift the emotion you feel, right? This is guilt as a superpower. You heal guilt by changing the reality that it lives in. And I want to expand on that just a little bit more. When I say putting on a different set of glasses, right? You're not going to you're not going to just put on those glasses and think, oh, I have $1 million. There's the Ferrari outside. That's not the type of visualization I want you to do when you put on these glasses. What I want you to do when you put on these glasses is I want you to see your current situation through the lens of the person you desire to be. Because if you're not looking at your situation through that lens, then you're not in alignment with who you say you want to be. And that comes from shifting your experience, right? Shifting how you're experiencing said situation. So then you can be in alignment with that identity. So you didn't have an identity shift, and that shifts the emotion because if you start to look at your life with a different set of glasses through the person that you said you wanted to be, then it gets easier, right? It's going to get a lot easier. Why wouldn't it? Because the person you want to be knows they operate with integrity. They know that they're not guilty. They're just feeling a little guilty because they know the truth. And the truth is, you have integrity. And I I created these frameworks and I'm not gonna lie, when I created them, I didn't think that they would I didn't I did this for myself, right? I created these things, these sets of processes for myself because I myself was going through this, right? I myself was, you know, putting other people on a pedestal, having high expectations of myself, not being able to, get things done, procrastinating, not, beating myself up because I missed the gym, beating myself, and I still struggle. I'm not perfect, which is why I created this, so I can always go back to it. Um, but it's through pivot that I'm able to shift from trying to control my life to being in alignment with my life. So pivot, the first word stands for purpose. So what is the purpose of this? What is this telling me, right? Guilt is just data. And then I stands for integrity. Choosing to know the truth. Choosing to know the truth of what this emotion or data is telling me. Vitality. Honoring where I feel it in my body. Where do I feel this emotion? Where is these emotion? Because a lot of us hold our emotions on our shoulders, or that when you feel butterflies, that's an emotion. That's your body signaling to you that it feels something. Okay. And then openness, right? That's what O stands for. Allowing the emotion to move instead of persisting, instead of attaching to it, just being curious. Openness is just another word for curious. And then transformation. This is where you realize that, okay, my higher self or my future self or, whatever you say, wouldn't really feel this way about this, right? And then you can be like, okay, I'm not that same person anymore. I process so I process so many emotions so quickly through this process that I I always end with I know who I am. I know who I am because I know who I am. I know I have the power. So back to Omnia. Omnia shifts you out of that loop or out of self imprisonment into being able to create, right? And the way it does that is this is the framework as well. O stands for openness. So not, like I said, being curious, not trying to force it, not trying to constrict it, not trying to constrict that energy inside of you. Rewiring. So a lot of us have a lot of memories connected to some of these strong emotions, right? And recoding those emotional meanings of that, or revisualizing or reimagining the memory that you had when you first felt those emotions is important to get off that loop, because if not, people are going to start to trigger you and you're not going to know why. It's going to be unconscious. You have to be curious, but you also have to remember where it came from, because if you don't remember where it came from, you cannot identify the trigger. Why is the trigger? How do you deal with this trigger? And then also nurturing yourself right after you identify the trigger, holding space for yourself. Sometimes I give myself a hug because I just need a hug. You know what I mean? Like telling yourself it's okay. You're going to be okay. I have one of my baby pictures, and sometimes I look at her and I'm just like, girl, you'll be so proud of me. But outside of just looking at her and telling her that she would be so proud of me, I also look at her and give her what I wanted when I was her, when I was that age. Because it does something, right? It changes that memory. And one thing that was really crazy for me that really helped also was realizing that memories are just imagination. I can imagine something else. I can imagine something else happen. And that allowed me to stop holding on to memories that didn't serve me, because it's just imagination. I don't remember exactly how it happened. I imagine it happened this way, but that other person that was there with me might imagine it happened a different way. It's literally just imagination. People say it's your side, their side, and then the truth. The only thing that matters is how you felt in that moment, right? And how you hold yourself moving forward, acknowledging that that moment made you feel some type of way. But what are those feelings? What are those feelings? Those feelings is just data leading you back to your inner compass, leading you back to where you're supposed to be going. So then you can move from integrity after acknowledging all of that. You can your actions become aligned with the outcomes that you want, and you can reclaim authority, which is the last letter of Omnia, over your life. So that's how you evolve. You evolve not through force, but through alignment. Pivot aligns your identity. Omnia aligns your frequency. And together, they dissolve resistance. It breaks the emotional loop that you were in, and it turns your guilt into guidance, because it's just integrity. It's actually a superpower. Sorry to break it to you. So we're going to do a listening practice, because I feel like we spend so much time on our phones, we spend so much time being of service to others. We don't listen to our bodies. We are not here, right? I want you to write down, what story has guilt been reinforcing in your life? Where has guilt pretended to be morality? Where has guilt become an illusion that you live inside? And what is guilt actually trying to show me? Where is guilt actually integrity rising in disguise? And each time you ask yourself this question, I really want you to listen and be inside your body and feel what comes up. Do you notice that the guilt is sitting in your throat? Is it in your chest? Is it in your belly? Are you holding it in your jaws, your shoulders? Also ask yourself, what other emotion am I feeling? Sometimes it's not just guilt. Sometimes it's shame. Sometimes it's disgust, you know. But feelings, when you feel these feelings, it should just be ambiguous. It shouldn't be you attach I am to it. Because I am is an identity. You don't want to be I am. You just want to feel it, allow it to move, right? And this opens the beginning of part two, which is balance. So I will be hosting a part two, um, probably next week or so. But I want you to leave here with a new truth that this is the beginning of what self love is. This is self care. I know that days we telling you going to get your nails done and going to, the mall to buy you a few things, going to get you a massage. All that is cute, right? But like I said, you take you wherever you go. And the hardest person to forgive is yourself. So why are you walking around being guilty or feeling guilty, right? Guilt becomes bondage the moment you believe that it means you are unworthy, because guilt is actually just integrity trying to get your attention. So it actually means you are worthy because you move through integrity. And I want to start this by saying I am proud of you and thank you for being here, and your willingness to listen to your emotions is just the beginning of taking your power back. I want to close this with an tapping session. And like I said, you're welcome to join. If you don't want to join, you can just simply observe, take what feels good, and leave what doesn't. So we're going to tap the side of our hand and say, even if guilt have shaped my past responses, I now choose truth over illusion. Even if guilt has shaped my past responses, I now choose guilt. I now choose truth over illusion. Even if guilt has shaped my past responses, I now choose truth over illusion. We're going to move on to the eyebrow. I realize that guilt, I released I released the guilt that kept me in survival. I released the guilt that kept me in survival. I released the guilt that kept me in survival. And then you're going to tap this side of the eye and say, I am not in danger anymore. I am not in danger anymore. I am not in danger anymore. And now we're going to tap under the eye. My body is allowed to relax now. My body is allowed to relax now. My body is allowed to relax now. Now moving to the nose. I am safe to see things clearly. I am safe to see things clearly. Now moving on to the chin. I am safe to choose differently. I am safe to choose differently. I am safe to choose differently. Now we're going to go to the collarbone. I can hold myself without bracing. I can hold myself without bracing. I can hold myself without bracing. Now we're going to tap under the arm. I let go of emotional bondage. I let go of emotional bondage. I let go of emotional bondage. Now we're going to tap the top of the head. I anchor into balance, integrity, and truth. I anchor into balance, integrity, and truth. I anchor into balance, integrity, and truth. Now pause. Hand over your heart. I am regulated. I am present. And I'm here. And I'm going to leave here choosing myself. And that brings me to say, your guilt does not define you. Your truth does. And your truth is that you have integrity and it's your superpower. So, what's the next steps after this? We move from illusion to nervous system regulation to summary. And that is what the next presentation will be on, or really more so, I guess, the conversation. I really don't like the word presentation. We call it conversation. Next conversation is about guilt detox and nervous system rebalance. Um, I'll call it from bondage to balance. How do we put this into practice? I also, ooh, okay, they don't have my last slide on there, but that's okay. I also have a telehealth community. I mean, sorry, a telehealth uh, business where I help high achieving women um, align with their hormones, support their hydration, support their fitness goals, support their nutrition goals. I offer Dutch tests, I offer GI maps, the whole functional medicine, telehealth services to support this process, support your body. I really feel like it's really important to balance mind, body, and spirit. So if you're interested in any of that, please let me know or book a 15-minute consultation. The link is in the community under the first course that you see. There's also, yeah, there will also be a, yeah, that's it. There will also be, I guess, another live call maybe every 2 weeks because this was a lot to put together, but I did it. So maybe every 2 weeks. We'll do bi-weekly. So drop one word that you're leaving here tonight or leaving with tonight. Let me know. What are you leaving with tonight? And that is it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was really excited to do this. I actually cried this morning because I was so happy to do this. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up for yourself too. I'm not sure how much you needed this, but I'm glad to be a messenger.